The Arizona sun blazed down on the city of Scottsdale, its searing rays reflecting off the luxurious glass facade of Sun Valley Motors. The sweltering summer air was infused with the rich aroma of coffee wafting from a nearby cafe and the fresh scent of new rubber from the tires displayed in the showroom. Jack Reynolds, a middle-aged man with a modest demeanor, stepped out of his pickup truck. The sound of his worn leather boots echoed against the scorching asphalt. On his head was a red cap emblazoned with the bold MAGA logo, a political symbol that has sparked much debate in American society. Jack was fully aware of the mixed reactions the cap might provoke, but he didn't wear it to make a political statement. Today it was part of a special mission. Standing before a line of sleek luxury cars neatly arranged and polished to a mirror shine, Jack paused to take in the scene. His outfit, faded jeans, a rolled-up blue shirt, and boots that had seen better days, contrasted sharply with the opulence of the showroom. But that, too, was by design. As the CEO of the company that owned the dealership, Jack wanted to see firsthand how his employees treated customers. Not the ones dressed in sharp suits or exuding wealth, but the ordinary people, those whose appearances might not immediately command respect. When Jack pushed open the glass doors, a wave of cool air from the air conditioning and the rich scent of genuine leather greeted him. The expansive showroom was meticulously arranged, nearly perfect in every detail. Sales representatives, impeccably dressed, were attentively assisting customers who appeared more worthy of their time than Jack. For a moment, no one noticed his presence. Jack calmly scanned the showroom, his eyes landing on a glossy black sports car illuminated by the spotlight. Finally, a young salesman with a slightly nervous expression approached and greeted him. "Good morning, sir. What kind of car are you looking for today?" Jack smiled faintly and shook his head. "I'm just browsing," he replied. But before the conversation could continue, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "I'll take it from here, Jeremy." A man approached with an air of authority. The name tag on his tailored suit identified him as Steve Harrison, the showroom manager. His meticulously styled suit exuded elegance, while his expression radiated coldness and pride. Steve's gaze flicked briefly to the MAGA cap on Jack's head before returning to his face, his displeasure barely concealed. "Sir," Steve began, his tone polite but distant, "I'm afraid we only serve serious customers." Jack raised an eyebrow, his smile fading. "And how do you know I'm not serious?" Steve narrowed his eyes slightly, maintaining a professional veneer. "It's our policy to prioritize customers who align with the dealership's values." Jack stood in silence for a moment, studying Steve with an inscrutable expression. "Interesting," he murmured, then turned back to peruse the cars, ignoring the tension that now hung in the air. The sound of Steve's expensive leather shoes echoed on the polished showroom floor as he followed closely behind Jack, his demeanor growing colder with every step. Jack moved calmly, occasionally pausing to admire the sleek sedans and luxury SUVs illuminated under the bright showroom lights. He showed no sign of haste or annoyance, yet the tension in Steve's posture was evident. "Sir," Steve finally stepped directly into Jack's path, his voice now tinged with impatience, poorly masked by a veneer of forced politeness. "I must insist that you leave." Jack halted, tilting his head slightly. His gaze drifted to Steve's name tag before locking eyes with him. "Leave," Jack repeated, his tone calm but firm. "And why is that?" Steve crossed his arms. "It's clear you're not here to buy a car. We aim to maintain an environment that suits our clientele. Your attire," he glanced disdainfully at the MAGA cap, "doesn't reflect the image we're trying to project." The air in the room grew heavy. A few employees exchanged uneasy glances, while a couple inspecting a car in the corner suddenly seemed more interested in the unfolding confrontation. Jack noticed the subtle shift but kept his expression neutral. "I see," Jack replied calmly. "And what image is that?" Steve hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice. "We cater to customers with progressive, open-minded values. We try to avoid divisive political elements." Jack let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "Progressive and open-minded, huh? Except when it comes to people with differing views." Steve tensed, his face flushing slightly. Sir, this isn't a debate. I'm asking you to leave. If you'd like, I can direct you to another dealership that might be a better fit. All right, back to work, he ordered brusquely, though there was a hint of unease in his tone, as if he sensed that this wasn't over. Outside, Jack stood by his pickup truck, the afternoon sun reflecting off the hood. He leaned against the door for a moment, looking back at the showroom through the reflective glass. His face revealed no emotion, but there was a glint in his eyes, perhaps determination, before he climbed into the truck and drove away. Jack's pickup merged into the bustling Scottsdale traffic, but his mind was already forming a plan. What had just transpired wasn't merely an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger issue that needed to be addressed. And as CEO, Jack knew what had to be done to change things. The Arizona sun continued to blaze fiercely, but the atmosphere inside Sun Valley Motors seemed to cool by several degrees after Jack's departure. Steve Harrison returned to his office, leaving his cutting remarks hanging in the air like static electricity. The employees resumed their tasks, but an unsettling tension lingered. Jeremy, the young salesman, sat uneasily at his desk, occasionally glancing toward the showroom. He couldn't shake the discomfort from witnessing how the visitor had been treated. There was something about the man that made Jeremy feel uneasy about Steve's approach. Meanwhile, Jack didn't go far. Parking his truck at a nearby cafe, he decided to act on a principle he often emphasized in his business philosophy: observation. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, he chose an outdoor table with a clear view of the dealership. From there, he could watch the showroom's activities through its expansive glass windows. Inside the dealership, the dynamics among the staff became increasingly revealing. Steve continued pacing around, exchanging forced smiles with customers and snapping at employees. At one point, Jeremy nervously approached his boss, clearly uneasy. "Sir," Jeremy began timidly, "was it really necessary to turn that customer away?" He seemed... Steve cut him off, his face tense. "Let me make something clear to you, Jeremy. People like him," he gestured dismissively toward the direction Jack had gone, "are not our target customers. If you want to succeed here, you need to understand the kind of clientele we prioritize." "Got it?" Jeremy's face flushed as he nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." This exchange didn't go unnoticed by some of the other employees, who whispered among themselves when Steve wasn't looking. It was evident not everyone agreed with their manager's approach, but no one dared to speak up. After all, Steve was known for running the dealership with an iron fist, where dissenting opinions were unwelcome. At the cafe, Jack sipped his coffee, its bitterness blending with the thoughts swirling in his mind. Years in the business world had taught him much about the art of leadership, but this moment struck a personal chord. Steve's bias wasn't just political. It revealed a lack of professionalism and respect that could rot an organization from within. Jack observed for nearly an hour, noting every subtle interaction. Employees avoided Steve's gaze, clearly wary of confronting him. Customers came and went, most treated courteously, but a palpable sense of insincerity hung over the interactions. This was a showroom that valued appearances above all else, a shallow priority that Jack found deeply troubling. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Jack pulled out his phone and made a call. "Darlene, it's me," he said in a calm tone. "Can you arrange a virtual meeting with the regional manager of Sun Valley Motors tomorrow morning? I have some matters to discuss." Darlene, his longtime assistant, responded without hesitation. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds. Anything else you need?" Jack glanced back toward the dealership, his expression firm. "No, that'll be all for now. Thank you, Darlene." He ended the call and took another sip of his coffee, his eyes still on the dealership. Tomorrow would bring change, and Jack intended to ensure it was the kind that mattered. Barron followed the unfolding events with a reflective mindset. He didn't want this to become a personal attack on anyone or tarnish the reputation of a business. Instead, he saw an opportunity to create something more meaningful. As his birthday approached, Barron felt a growing responsibility to turn this moment into something positive. While scrolling through thousands of comments, one stood out. "Imagine what we could achieve if everyone handled conflicts with this level of maturity. Barron, you should lead a campaign on respect and kindness." That idea planted a seed in Barron's mind. What if this incident could inspire a broader conversation? What if people could move beyond their biases and start seeing each other as individuals, rather than labels? With the idea taking shape, Barron reached out to his team. He didn't want this to be a story about him or his name. It had to be about the message. Together, they began brainstorming ideas for a campaign focused on mutual respect, transcending political, social, and cultural divides. Meanwhile, Orem Motors, a luxury car brand known for its innovation and inclusivity, saw an opportunity. They contacted Barron, inviting him to visit their flagship showroom in Miami. This wasn't just a business move. It was a chance to showcase how a business should treat its customers. The visit to Orem Motors was an entirely different experience. A senior executive personally greeted Barron at the door, shaking his hand warmly. There were no scrutinizing looks, no judgmental attitudes, just genuine professionalism and respect. As Barron explored the showroom, he was drawn to the Orem Apex, a sleek black electric vehicle that blended cutting-edge technology with timeless design. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of progress and innovation. During the transaction process, Barron proposed an idea. What if we turn this moment into something bigger, he suggested, a campaign about respect, not just in business but in everyday life. The leadership at Orem Motors was immediately captivated by the idea. Within hours, plans were in motion. Orem Motors agreed to sponsor a nationwide campaign, with Barron as the face of the movement. Together, they unveiled the initiative Drive Respect, a campaign encouraging respect, understanding, and kindness, both on and off the road. The announcement resonated with people across the country. Drive Respect quickly gained traction, sparking conversations about how small gestures of respect could lead to meaningful change in communities, businesses, and personal lives. Barron's moment of reflection had transformed into a powerful movement for progress. Karen listened attentively, the occasional sound of her pen scratching against paper punctuating the silence. When Jack finished, she cleared her throat. "Mr. Reynolds, I sincerely apologize for your experience. This behavior is completely unacceptable. I'll address it immediately." Jack didn't respond right away. He let the moment linger before speaking. "Karen, I need more than an apology. This isn't just about one incident. This is about culture. What's happening at Sun Valley Motors isn't isolated to Scottsdale. It's systemic." Karen hesitated, then sighed. "You're right. We've received complaints about this location before, but nothing as serious as this. I'll conduct a thorough review of their operations and—" Jack gently interrupted. "That won't be necessary. I'll handle this myself." Karen's surprise was palpable through the phone. "You, sir?" "Yes," Jack said firmly. "I want to see how they react when the CEO walks through the door. Not as a stranger, but as their leader. I'll be there this afternoon. Make sure they're ready." Karen agreed, her voice a mix of relief and apprehension. Jack ended the call, his resolve stronger than ever. He wasn't just going to confront Steve Harrison, he was going to set a new standard for what the company stood for. At exactly 3 p.m., Jack's pickup truck rolled into the parking lot of Sun Valley Motors once more. This time, he entered with a different purpose. Not as a disrespected customer, but as a CEO ready to implement necessary changes. The MAGA cap still rested on his head, but now it carried a different meaning, a symbol of the lesson about to be delivered. Employees glanced up as Jack walked in, their expressions shifting between confusion and panic. Jeremy froze mid-conversation with a customer, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. Steve was the last to notice Jack's presence. Emerging from his office with his usual air of confidence, he stopped short the moment he recognized yesterday's visitor. The color drained from Steve's face as realization set in. Mr. Reynolds," he stammered, his usual polished demeanor crumbling. I didn't realize." Jack didn't let him finish. "We need to talk. In your office," he said in a low, steady voice. "Right now." The showroom fell silent as Jack followed a visibly shaken Steve into his office, the door closing firmly behind them. The atmosphere was so tense it felt like it could be cut with a knife, but no one dared to whisper a word. Inside the office, Jack calmly took a seat across from Steve's desk, his demeanor composed but unmistakably stern. "Do you know why I'm here?" he asked, his voice steady. Steve swallowed hard, avoiding Jack's gaze. I, I can guess, sir, he managed, his hands trembling slightly as he sat down. Jack leaned forward, fixing Steve with a piercing stare. Good. Then let's start with this. What exactly were you thinking when you treated a potential customer the way you did yesterday? Steve swallowed hard, his hands reflexively adjusting his perfectly knotted tie. I, I assume this is about yesterday. Jack leaned forward slightly. Yes, Steve. And much more than that. Let me make one thing clear. I've spent decades building this company, not just as a business, but as a standard of excellence. What I witnessed yesterday, your behavior, your attitude toward a potential customer, was not just unprofessional. It was a complete betrayal of those values. Steve opened his mouth to say something, but Jack raised a hand to silence him. I'm not finished. Do you realize the damage your actions have caused this dealership? Not just financially, but reputationally. You didn't just insult me. You undermined every employee who witnessed it and every customer who felt the tension in that showroom. Steve lowered his head, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. With all due respect, sir, he tried to defend himself, I was simply trying to uphold the dealership's image. We have a reputation to maintain. Jack shook his head, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face. A reputation, Steve? A reputation isn't built on exclusion. It's built on integrity. And yesterday, you showed none of it. The room fell silent, the air taut with tension. Jack let the moment linger before continuing. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties. Karen Bishop will oversee the transition until a new manager is appointed. Steve's eyes widened in disbelief. You're firing me? Just for this? Jack stood, his expression resolute. This isn't just about you, Steve. This is about setting a standard for everyone. This company does not tolerate discrimination, and it certainly won't accept arrogance masquerading as leadership. Steve slumped into his chair, his face pale. Jack turned toward the door but paused before leaving. One more thing, he said, looking back. Consider this a lesson. Wherever you go next, remember this. Respect isn't optional. It's the foundation of any successful business and any decent human being. Without waiting for a response, Jack exited the office, leaving Steve alone to face the consequences of his actions. In the showroom, the employees looked up as Jack emerged, their expressions a mix of curiosity and newfound respect. Jack's presence carried a gravity that was impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a moment of discipline, it was a turning point, a reminder of the values the company was built upon, and every person in the room felt it. Jack stood before the employees, his tone calm but authoritative. I want all of you to understand one thing. This dealership and this company stands for respect, professionalism, and excellence. If at any point you feel these values are not being upheld, you have my direct number. I expect nothing less than your full commitment to these principles. Jeremy, standing at the back, looked particularly relieved. Jack gave him a small nod before heading for the door. Stepping into Arizona's blinding sunlight, Jack felt a sense of accomplishment. The dealership would recover. More importantly, the lessons learned here would resonate throughout the company, ensuring that no customer, no matter who they were, would ever endure such treatment again. News of the sudden managerial change spread quickly among the staff. Whispers and exchanged glances filled the air as employees began to process what had just happened. For some, it felt like justice had finally been served, a long overdue correction to a toxic environment. For others, it was a stark reminder that no one was above accountability. Later in the day, Karen Bishop arrived at the dealership to meet with the staff. Standing in the center of the showroom, she addressed them with a mix of empathy and determination. Today marks a turning point for this dealership, she began. We're here to rebuild, to refocus on what matters most, our customers and each other. This isn't just about making sales. It's about creating an environment of respect, trust, and professionalism. Her words struck a chord with Jeremy, who had spent the past hours reflecting on the events of the previous day. He stepped forward hesitantly, but with resolve. I'd like to say something, he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. Karen nodded, encouraging him to continue. Jeremy took a deep breath. I've been working here for over a year, and I've seen firsthand how Steve's attitude affected everyone, customers and employees alike. Yesterday was hard to watch, but seeing Mr. Reynolds step in gave me hope. Hope that things can change. Karen smiled warmly, her approval evident. Thank you, Jeremy. Change starts with people like you, those who are willing to speak up and stand firm when things go wrong. Jeremy's words hung in the air, resonating deeply with his colleagues. What had started as a day of reckoning was quickly transforming into a moment of renewal. As the team absorbed the impact of Jack's visit and Karen's leadership, a sense of possibility began to replace the unease. For the first time in a long while, the Sun Valley Motors staff felt that the values they claimed to represent might actually become reality. In the weeks that followed, the Sun Valley Motors dealership underwent significant changes. Karen implemented a series of training sessions focused on customer service, cultural sensitivity, and teamwork. The employees began to bond in ways they never had before, breaking down barriers that Steve's leadership had inadvertently erected. Jeremy emerged as a natural leader among his colleagues. His willingness to stand up for what was right did not go unnoticed by Karen, who took a personal interest in mentoring him on management principles. Within a few months, Jeremy was promoted to assistant manager, a role he approached with humility and determination. I never thought I'd be in this position, Jeremy confided to Karen during a performance review, but I've realized leadership isn't about authority. It's about serving others and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. Karen smiled approvingly. That's exactly why Mr. Reynolds and I trust you in this role. Meanwhile, Steve's dismissal sent ripples throughout the company. Other dealerships in the chain took notice, prompting a company-wide initiative spearheaded by Jack himself. Workshops, all-hands meetings, and anonymous feedback channels were introduced to ensure that every employee, from the ground floor to the executive level, felt heard and valued. One morning during the monthly virtual meeting with regional managers, Jack shared his vision. We're not just selling cars, he said. We're building relationships. Every person who walks through our doors brings their own story. Our job is to listen and respect those stories, no matter how different they may be from our own. As for Steve, the road after leaving the company wasn't easy, but proved to be transformative. The months following his termination were marked by humility and introspection. He sought guidance, attended leadership workshops, and worked to rebuild his reputation through smaller roles. I was wrong, Steve admitted in an email to Jack 6 months after the incident. Not just about that day, but about the way I viewed everything. I thought I was upholding a standard, but I was really creating barriers. Thank you for teaching me that lesson, no matter how painful it was. Jack read the email with quiet satisfaction, knowing that even the hardest lessons can lead to growth. Steve's journey served as a reminder of the company's commitment to change, not just in policies but in people. Sun Valley Motors became a model of transformation, with its Scottsdale dealership leading the way. Employees embraced a renewed sense of purpose, customers noticed the shift, and the company's culture began to reflect Jack's vision of respect, professionalism, and excellence. The ripple effect of those pivotal moments continued to spread, proving that true leadership lies in the ability to inspire and uplift everyone around you. Jack read the email with a faint smile. He had encountered many people like Steve, those who needed a wake-up call to recognize their mistakes. Not everyone had the capacity to change, but those who did often became more humble and understanding. At Sun Valley Motors, the changes were evident not just in the business metrics, but in the small daily interactions. Employees greeted every customer with the same genuine smile, listened without judgment, and supported one another in their work. Jeremy, now more confident in his new role, often took time to train new employees on the importance of treating every customer as the most important person in the room. His approach wasn't just about making sales, it was about building connections. Every person who walks through these doors has a story, he would say during training sessions. Our job isn't to judge that story, but to be a positive part of it. A year after the incident, Jack returned to Sun Valley Motors. This time, the atmosphere was entirely different. Employees greeted him warmly, their confidence and camaraderie palpable. Jeremy approached Jack with a genuine smile and shook his hand. Mr. Reynolds, it's great to see you again. Jack smiled, his eyes scanning the bustling showroom. It seems like everything is running smoothly. Jeremy nodded. Thanks to you, your actions reshaped the way we work. Jack's smile widened. No, Jeremy, you all made it happen. I just reminded you of what you were capable of. The conversation was brief, but its impact lingered. As Jack left the dealership that day, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This experience had been a powerful reminder of the true strength of leadership, not just in correcting mistakes, but in inspiring meaningful change. The story of Sun Valley Motors became more than just a corporate anecdote. It evolved into a profound lesson about leadership, humanity, and the consequences of unchecked bias. Jack Reynolds, a man who built his empire on the principles of respect and fairness, reminded everyone in his company that those values were not just slogans. They were the foundation of success. News of the incident spread beyond the dealership, sparking discussions in the broader business community. Articles were written about the power of quiet leadership, and Jack's actions became a case study in addressing workplace toxicity without resorting to theatrics or public shaming. Sometimes, Jack shared during a speech at a business conference, the greatest lessons come from the smallest moments. A hat, a bias, a decision to stand up for what's right. These are the things that shape our culture. And so, this is the story of the man in the MAGA hat, a story not about politics or perspectives, but about humanity, respect, and the power of positive change. Dear friends, after reading this story, take a moment to reflect. What invisible barriers might we be creating in our daily lives? Are we truly listening to and respecting those with different viewpoints? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story, every perspective is an opportunity for us to learn and grow together. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like and share to spread this positive message. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content. Thank you for joining us in this journey. See you again in the next story. Star.